I'm going to start with Tosin. First of all, you're not even practicing what you did with master's degree, which is a whole other discussion. So she is now, but that's a whole other topic. But I don't even really know where to start. I wrote so many questions. What would you say? Because it sounds to me. First of all, we have a lot of students in the audience, so they probably haven't left yet, but they're probably working towards leaving. So when you get over there, you've been there for so long, you told us your reason for coming back, but when you just look at maybe some of your friends, or just even from what you know now, how do you know, you talked about it, but just if you can reiterate, what are some good reasons, aside from yours, that you would say would be good enough for coming back to Nigeria? Ophelia gave a different perspective, and we'll get to him in just a moment, but what would you say should be some good reasons to come back? If you can just reiterate that, because a lot of people in the audience haven't even gone to start with, and you were gone for 24 years. You gave us your reason, but if you could just talk a little bit more to that, yeah, that would be great.
Thank you for the question. So, so I think my perspective is a very unique one in terms of the fact that I actually grew up in the US. But I also spent long enough in Nigeria to be able to come back. My first language was Yoruba, because my father is a very interesting man. He used to always say that his job was not to teach us the colonial master's language. So we all learned Yoruba at the house, and then he would send us to school to learn English. So I was always very much tied to my culture. He made sure that we visited home every year. And we always had family members from Nigeria visiting us as often as possible. So I never felt disconnected from home. That was the first thing. Okay, so that makes it very different from maybe others that, I know some of my friends that I met there, they've never even come back home. Their parents just tell them about their country, and they themselves, if you ask them where they're from, they'll say, I'm American. And that's a question of identity. It's a very layered and complex discussion. But for me, even after 24 years in America, I never could say I'm American. Even though I grew up there, I went to elementary school, I went to high school, I went to college, but for me, I was always forever going to be Nigerian. And so I think inbuilt in me was always going to be that sense that this isn't home. I don't know how else to explain it. So I just never, I got my citizenship very early, all of that, but I just never felt like it was my country. So having said that, I think I echoed everything the gentleman here says in terms of, I'm not here to sell a dream of Nigeria. I think we all have to be very honest about what Nigeria is and isn't. And I think it's also easy for folks like me, and I'll admit it, to say, being home is the best decision I made. Oh, well, that's easy for you to say because you've been able to get good jobs, you've been able to set yourself up in a very nice way. I understand that. But here's the thing. Having grown up in America as well, I can tell you that everywhere has its challenges. That's just the truth. And the narratives that we tell, the stories that we tell about each of the places that we live in, we have to be careful about that. We have to be careful about what we absorb. What do I mean by that? For me, yes, I love the US for what it is. I grew up there, it gave me a lot. But I can tell you that I feel safer in Nigeria than I do in America. Why do I say that? If you watch the news, you'll see that a mass shooting happens in America. At this point, I think maybe every month. Anyone can go to Walmart, you can go to a store, you can buy a gun within minutes. They don't really do a background check. So if somebody's upset, they can shoot you, they can, so there's violence there. So people say, oh, there's security issues in Nigeria. I say, yes, that is correct. We do have security issues. But guess what? America also has security issues. But because of the way that they've packaged their own, it's packaging, right? That's what I call it. We tend to forget. We are eager to go there. We don't think about the dangers that are also over there, right? So for me, the reasons for coming home are very personal, and it will always be personal. I don't think it's there's not a rule for everyone. Not everyone will respond the same. I know people that have gone to America and they've thrived. They've done very well for themselves. But I also know people that have gone to America and it's almost like, why did I leave my country, right? Because you go there, The degree that you have here does not translate over there. So the job, so maybe you were a doctor here, or Madam Doctor, you now go there, they'll say that you can maybe do security guard or drive Uber. And that's just the truth. I'm not lying. Okay, so you get there and you realize that it's not really the land of milk and honey as they sold you. Your bills are due every month, okay? And there's no mercy in America like here, where if you don't have your rent, the landlord will say, okay, Jen Shanu, do you understand? Like, let me help them until they can get the money. In America, within 1 month, they've evicted you. Your stuff is on the streets. You're homeless. If anybody remembers that story of the young boy who won the chess championship in New York, I don't know if anybody heard that story. His parents went there, and I guess they were probably looking for greener pasture. But by the time the story was written, they were in a homeless shelter. So again, I'm not saying that, you know, America is bad. I'm just saying, let us be careful of our expectation of the abroad as well. I've seen it all. So I know that going there, it also has its challenges. You will start from the beginning, and you will hope that you can find a job that will allow you to sustain the life that you think you deserve. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a very interesting predicament. And like a gentleman said here, I believe it was you or someone that said, some people will move, they've sold everything to go back there, to go over there. And when you now get there, you realize it's not as easy as he said. You can't come back. First of all, there's the embarrassment of coming back. Didn't you go to Canada? Why are you coming back? I know, you front. The one that's doing taxi driver, if you know how many taxi drivers I met in Nigeria, in America that were Nigerians, when they come here, they'll never tell you that they're driving taxi now. No, because all the money that they've saved, they'll come here and they'll show that, yes, I'm coming from there abroad. So let us have honest conversations with one another about both sides of what it is. Here in Nigeria, I can tell you one thing, I will never starve. Things can go bad, maybe, but because of family network alone, there will be somebody that will feed me in this Nigeria. That's just the truth. I will not starve. In America, I cannot tell you that I will not starve. Because if things go wrong and they don't give me salary, they evict me, I had to go to homeless shelter, I could starve. That's just the truth, you know. And so for me, I just want us to be very honest with ourselves. And I always know that the grass, as they say, there's a quote that says the grass is always greener on the side that you water. So rather than saying, let me go over there where the grass is greener, it looks like that. That's just human nature. But then when you get there, you start to say, I miss home. Hi. See winters, they punish me like this. Snow. Every day my boss is calling me, why are you not at work? We're going to fire you every day, you know? So it gets real. So let's focus on things that we might be able to do here as well. And like, I know Nigeria is very frustrating, I understand. I really do. I had a breakdown, I won't lie, I'll be very honest. A few months ago, I said, I'm leaving. What? Do I have a passport? Let me be going. And then by the next week, I was like, let me sit in my own country, Jerry. I was watching the news and Trump was saying something again. I said, let me stay here. So that's just my own honest truth that I answer. So it's a personal choice, but let's be informed before we make decisions that are permanent. Let's leave options open on both sides.
All right, Mr. Davis, I like how you painted a picture of the opportunities that you've had in Nigeria. So you talked about, I mean, you were there before Abuja was Abuja. You know, you've built all these incredible buildings that we now enjoy and that we now see. Opportunities that you even admit that you probably would never have had in the UK. And now you're the boss, right? So you probably work with a lot of Nigerians and foreigners as well in your company. So as somebody who understands firsthand the opportunities that abide in this country, do you see, or can you just share with us how Nigerians are taking advantage of these opportunities and what is required of us as Nigerians to take advantage of these opportunities here working in our own country? I would like to imagine that many of your employees probably trained abroad, went to school abroad, but maybe surprise us and share with us the stories of people who actually went to school here and are doing really well. So just want you to talk a little bit about the opportunities that are here and how you're seeing Nigerians taking advantage of those opportunities, because I would imagine that architecture in Nigeria, practicing it here, if you're able and fortunate to get a great job, must be an incredible opportunity because of all of the development that's happening. So if you can just talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, and I always say that being an architect is a great privilege. because it's such an obvious, what you do is so obvious, it can be seen by everybody. Of course, you've got to get it right. If you do it badly, that's the downside. But I do have incredible staff, and I'm certainly not going to hand over to an expatriate. I will hand over to a Nigerian, because that's how it should be. And the staff that I have are mixed. Not many of them have been educated overseas. And I always say that there are one or two places you can get a reasonable architectural education here. It's not half as good as it used to be. But if you've got flair, if you've got imagination, and now if you use the internet and you've got the opportunity to travel, that makes up for a lot of the shortcomings in the architectural education. After all, I believe even in UK or the States, architects are formed by, and it's a long training, it's basically 7 years by the time you're able to register. And they're training you in a way of thinking. It's not that they're teaching you, exactly how to design a building or whatever, but it's a process, and that your mind is being formed. When you come out of an architectural college, you go into a job, you haven't got a clue what to do. It's that time when you start learning how to actually design things, run projects, manage sites, and all the other things that architects do. And it's a fabulous profession because it's such a broad scope of activities, from the creative part through to the intellectual side of detailing buildings, the legal side of putting together legal documents and contract documents, and then the ability to project manage a project when it's on site. So it is a very fulfilling profession. But I have to say, in Nigeria now, it's very much under stress because there's so much competition, so much discounting of fees. It's very difficult to earn a very good living on it. And this is why a lot of architects are diversifying and becoming suppliers of lighting equipment or sanitary ware, whatever else. And this is, I guess, where architects have opportunities here. I've obviously seen in my 39 years with James Cubitt, many architects come through, learn the profession of architecture, then move on to start their own practices. Some of them very, very successfully, and others maybe not so successfully, but maybe they've done something else, they've become contractors, or they've gone into the associated activities related to that. So there are there are opportunities in Nigeria, despite all the problems that we've been acknowledging here.
Thank you. So Ophili, sorry, I know him as Ophili. Okechukwu, I have to get used to that. So yours is a very interesting story because just a few months ago, your perspective has changed, and you're probably almost ready to get out of here and just move on to other things, because of what's been going on in our country. And a lot of people can probably relate to that right now because of just the way this country is. Every day you hear somebody has moved. A friend of mine just moved back 2 weeks ago, or moved away, never lived abroad, has moved to Canada. I was talking to somebody just before we started the event who said somebody has moved off to Brazil. I mean, people are now moving to other places, Qatar. I mean, just get me out of here. Because really, you ask yourself, who Nigeria is, right? People say, well, I say there's no award for being Nigerian. Like, you suffer till you're 90, nobody's gonna hand you an award and say, you are a Nigerian, you suffered, good job for suffering, right? So, for somebody who is kind of where you are right now, I would also like to imagine that, thank you. I'd also like to imagine that there was a lot of value in your living abroad prior to coming back. That probably gave you a bit of an advantage, right? So again, I kind of want to address it from this angle because we have a lot of people here who haven't even gone to university yet, and this conversation that we're having will probably help them sometime in the future. So how do you, where's my question? Should you have a plan when you go to come back? Is that a good idea, right? Should you have that plan? And how do you prepare mentally? Because everyone has a different psychological threshold for Nigeria. Some people, I'm sure many people in this room know people, just by show of hands, you have that one cousin who is a lost cause, you know they're never coming back to Nigeria. Does anybody know people like that? Where you're like, that one is gone, just they're never coming back. They probably even married a foreigner, they're not even, you know. How do you prepare mentally? Because you mentioned that, but what does that look like in real terms? How do you prepare mentally for being in this environment, especially when you've then lived abroad? Because I think the disadvantage to living abroad is you see how things can actually work. If you've never left this country and this is all you've ever known, you might even be at a slight advantage because you're like, hey, there's no light. We've never really had light, so what's the big deal? But you live abroad, you come back and you want to rip your hair out because you know you've seen it work better. So if you can just speak to preparing mentally, and again, a lot of people don't always. Life is like this, right? You don't always have a blueprint and you say, I'm going to live in America for 10 years and on the 11th year I will move back. It doesn't really work out that way. So if you just talk to whether or not you should have that plan for these guys who haven't even gone, and then also how do you prepare for this place called Nigeria?
So the first thing is we have to be careful, you know, and we have to be careful because sometimes we fall into the trap of what I call sentimentalism or being sentimental, right? Being sentimental to the point that if you come out and say moving back to Nigeria is not a great idea unless you have X, Y, Z, people look at you as an unpatriotic person, and you know. And for me, I'm an engineer by training. I look at numbers, I look at things. If something hasn't changed over and over again, you know, you have to approach it in a different way, right? Israel is a country that is very successful. In fact, I think they challenge America in terms of the number of patents they have. What the Israel government has done is they've said, look, for us to be successful, we have to go into America, tap into America, and then sort of come back to Israel, and they've made it work for them. And if you look at our soccer teams, for example, playing right now, practically everybody there is playing abroad, right? But they've somehow come back to benefit Nigeria. And it's not coincidental that every single person sitting on this stage, including yourself, was in the US, right? What I'm saying basically is I have looked at Nigeria for 9 years, right? And to say you're going to come to Nigeria and abandon ship and you're just going to be in Nigeria and you're going to solve the problem, it's not going to work. That's based on my experience. I believe that what we should be doing is letting people go to Canada, US, and then let them use that experience to sort of help Nigeria. My mindset in the past couple of years was one of permanence. This is Nigeria. I'm selling off everything in the US, and I'm saying, based on the numbers, based on reality, it's not. If somebody that I loved was like, look, I'm selling off everything I have in America and I want to come back to Nigeria, I'll say, no, don't do that. You always have, or a person says, I'm going to abandon my permanent residence, I'm going to sell off my citizenship, I'll say, no, right? And we need to be telling people the truth about this, because if you're able to sort of live in America and you come back, where is 1 year or 2 years, you would help out the country a lot more. And for me, my wake-up call was when I just realized that in that Colade Johnson, I sit back and I realize that in Colade Johnson, if I had written that article, if I had just made a little bit of noise, he probably wouldn't be dead. Because I know the old me, I would have recorded it, whether it's a secret camera, but I had given up, I had just sort of gotten sunk into the system. And I think sometimes you sort of need to step back and have a breath of fresh air. In terms of I think your last question was like, how do you prepare mentally? Somebody said, I read a book once, it said if you get, the people that get captured, they captured some soldiers, right? And they said the people that felt that they would be there for like 2 days or 3 days, they died, they didn't survive. Right? It was going to be a struggle, it was difficult, they survived because they had prepared themselves mentally. So if you come to Nigeria and you believe that Nigeria is a cakewalk, right? Nigeria is going to be easy. You just come in, you take your American idea and you put it here and the government is going to say, oh, this guy is great, let's help him. No, that's not the country you're facing. I know how difficult it was for me to do NYSC, and I was serving my country. I know how difficult they made. So it is, how do you prepare yourself mentally for the difficulty and challenge that is Nigeria, and how do you avoid, because if I was still an expert, I would have been telling everybody, just come. But if not everybody is going to come with the soft landing or the expert or with the connections or with this safe landing. And remember, Lagos is not Nigeria. We're talking about Edo State, we're talking about Rivers State, we're talking about Abia State, we're talking about states where they don't even have an ATM for God, So Nigeria is tough. Prepare yourself mentally for that toughness. Understand that when you go to the US, you're taking all your best ideas and you're coming back to help the country. But if you just come back and you don't have an escape path, it might be very difficult. So that's my truth.
Thank you. So because of time, I know that Glory didn't quite go into a bit of her story and how hard it was really in terms of getting support, and you don't really need to go into that in detail because of time, but I'm sure we all agree that sports in this country, most athletes feel like don't even bother, like just pack your bags and go if you can. So can you just, talk about, from working with Bambo, who I actually know personally as well, doing incredible work, trying to do the whole grassroots thing and get people to represent Nigeria more. I don't know if anybody in here is interested in sports, but if you could just talk a little bit about the realities of the challenges or the reality of the challenges that Nigerian athletes face, and from now working with Making of Champions, what hope there is for that sector to improve, because it really just is right now not the best of situations, and you've had some pretty bad experiences in the past with I won't get into it because I heard a bit of your story, but if you could just talk a little bit about what the hope is, if there is any hope, for anybody in here who's an aspiring athlete who really wants to represent Nigeria but has been told, get citizenship somewhere else, learn another language, and go where the pasture is greener. If you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the truth is, here in Nigeria is really, I must tell you, it's not easy, it's tough. Because the challenges we have here is, an athlete will train, suffer, train, you don't even have competitions, you don't even have encouragement, you don't even have anyone to, take you to competition. Maybe you prepare for a particular competition, you don't even have the money to go. So, the truth is, it's really, really tough. But, the only remedy or the only, the truth that can salvage this situation is, like corporate bodies, for example, the Making of Champions, just as I said, we recruit from grassroots, we recruit the youths, that's, the people we recruited, it has taken many people, many youths from the streets. They don't have something they hold on to, they come to training. And, the good news is also that, we take care of education. So if, like we can have more corporate bodies, the governments, other people that can, come in and do exactly or something like what Bambo is doing, what Making of Champions is doing, it will help a lot, because this youths, many people are hungry, many people want to do sports, many people want to, represent the country, but, some people don't even have a medium. You can imagine, for example, in my state, we don't even have a stadium. In Abia State, the whole Abia State, there is no stadium. The only stadium we have is, maybe football, pitches and all those kind. We don't even have a tartan track. And it was just like that when I was there. When I was young, there was no stadium. So, it's really tough, but, you have to know what you want for yourself, because you're now going to think that it's going to be a bed of roses, because, for example, myself, when I started, it was not easy. I was running with barefoot initially, then my school bought me spy shoes. Then I was running in the concrete, it was in the concrete that I was running. But because, my mindset, or because what I have in mind is I will make it, you don't have to allow anybody to discourage you. You have to know that it's not going to be easy, but you have to keep going. And if the government, for example, is helping, for example, encouraging the athletes, organizing more competitions and more corporate bodies coming in, you see that many people, many youths will be taken out of the streets. For example, the athletes in the making of champions, they are in schools because, the mentality we have here is, don't do sports. Sports people, they are illiterate. It's not true, because the mentality we have is what we want to take out. You have to know that there are athletes who are, professionals too, who are lawyers, who are doctors, who are engineers, who are, you can actually become what you want. But the only person that can stop you is just only you. If you have that mindset, have that mentality that is tough, there's no one to help me, you just be there. You just be there and you will not, make it. But I want to encourage us, I want to tell us that, if you really think that you can really become something or make it in sports, you will work hard for it. I know that it's not easy, but definitely you will find a way out. Governments, sometimes they organize competitions. You try and make your way there. You try and, encourage yourself, because there is still hope. There is hope, because here in Nigeria, if what, making of champion is doing, more people come into it and, do something like that. You see that, even in other sports, you see that many people will go into sports because it's really, really encouraging. Imagine where you be training, you have all the, facilities, you even, if you're students, you also, you have a scholarship. So it's something that, you can really get if you really want it.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, if you have any more questions, can we send them down quickly, because we are wrapping things up. Tosi, this question is for you. Do you think it's advisable to school in Nigeria for my university, or should I travel out? Also, can you say more? So we have a couple of people asking about your mentoring program as well, so if you could talk about those two things.
Thank you. So I think, obviously you can tell that I'm a champion of Nigeria, and I know that Nigeria is hard in many, many ways. But I will also echo what was said about the idea of options. Options are good. So if you're going to move back home, I would never, and you heard me say throughout my story, I didn't move back home without a job. I didn't move back without having saved enough to at least say, okay, I can live, for the next how many, 2 years, even if I don't have a job and I'm trying to figure things out, I'll be okay. So I'm not saying just take the leap and you drop everything, and that goes both ways. Don't just drop everything here and go abroad. Don't just drop everything abroad and come back. It's always about balance, and it's always about researching and saying, okay, I'm going to step out and I'm going to give myself the option. And so to answer your question about schooling, give yourself the option. Apply to schools here and apply to schools abroad and see what happens. And depending on your financial situation, you may have to make a difficult decision. So in some cases, you might get into a school abroad, but maybe when you look at the tuition, you might say, you know what, we can't afford that, so I have to school here. But what I'll do is that I'll position myself in such a way that the kind of work and the kind of impact that I'll be making, because with the young people in this room, just because you're young and living in Nigeria does not mean that there are not opportunities for you abroad. I have young people that I know. One of them, she was the only one in her school to apply for a program that is run by Yale University. No one else in her school applied because they weren't paying attention. So she applied and she got in. And it's for a summer program. And you can go to school here in Nigeria as well, and there are all kinds of science scholarships. Oh, we are looking for proposal from, people in Nigeria. They have so many programs because of the UN, goals and everything all over the world, global programs that are looking for people like you to apply, but we're not paying attention, so we don't apply, and we don't get these opportunities. So what I'm saying is apply to schools in the US or UK. If you get scholarships, then obviously I'm going to encourage you to go. Or if you can afford it, I would say, yes, go there because the quality of education is better. But if you don't have that option, right, don't say because I have to stay in Nigeria, that means that's it, there's no other hope for me. No. You have to just be very, very ambitious, driven, and focused enough to say, I will continue to tap into options outside of Nigeria, even if I am still schooling in Nigeria. So I would just encourage you guys to look at both sides, give yourself options for both, and then do your very best with whatever you're left with to make sure that your situation, whether good or bad, does not then limit what you grow to become. I don't believe in limitation, especially for young people, I just don't. My mentorship program is called the Power Girls Africa. And the reason I called it that is because I believe that every power woman starts off as a power girl. And so I'm looking for promising young women. It's a 6-week program. During the summer, it starts on July 20th through August 31st. You have to apply for the program, okay? And if you, I don't know how many of you are on social media, I know a lot of young people are, but if you follow the Bloom Africa, THEBLOOM Africa, the link for the application is in the bio. And also it's in my bio, Tosin Dorotwe is my Instagram name. So it's also in my bio there. And I have flyers as well. They're not printed, unfortunately, but I can send it with somebody here that can maybe forward it to everyone that was invited. And I can tell you that in the 2 days that it's been open, I've almost gotten 20 applications already. And so it's going to be a bit competitive. But we're looking for young women that have promise. Right? So I want to see that you've thought about some things that you want to do with yourself, thought about some things that you want to give back. Because a huge part of this is public service too. I want you to be able to think about how you can contribute to your surroundings and to yourself. And so the program is going to feature mentorship lunches. So you'll be meeting with me as well as the power women in my circle. I know a few. You'll be having lunches with them. Those are covered by the program. You will also, have to come for a 2-day leadership academy. During that academy, you will learn things from presentation skills, confidence, financial management, right? Even things like how to write correspondences. Really things that I feel like every young woman should already know. How to interview for jobs, how to negotiate a salary. And the reason I'm doing this is because I meet so many other women that are in their 20s, and they asked me to be their mentor, and I said, I can tell that a lot of things that they should have known since they were 15, 16, 17, no one told them. So I'm trying to now teach those people so that when you get to that age, you're already equipped with all the tools that you need. Then of course you're going to do a service project that's required of the program. And then you have lifelong mentorship as well as career coaching. So how do you choose what you study? And I'm not an African parent, so I'm not going to tell you that your only options are doctor, engineer, and lawyer. We know that there are 3 options. I'm going to introduce you to other things that you could do with the things that you love. So what do you love, and where can you find a career that will allow you to do well, do what you love, but also make money? So those are the kind of things that I want to teach and impart on the young girls that are going to apply for this program. So if you're interested, feel free to collect my card and then follow up, and I'll send you the email for the link. Okay, thank you.
Okay, somebody from the team can just let me know how much time we have. 5 minutes. Okay, so here's a question that says, a comment and a question. I'm going to merge 2 questions for Ophili. Somebody said we should have called this Nigeria's Exodus the quest. We shouldn't have called it the quest for gold, but the quest for hope, because a lot of people know the perils that exist but are hopeless. So we're going to tie that to this next question. It talks about, the storytellers, a lot of them have, international education, which is the bedrock of their fantastic careers in life. Given that the ordinary Nigerian can't afford foreign education for their children, is there any hope of a better life for young ones if they don't relocate? I want you to answer that question, Ophili. Yes.
Hello. A classmate of mine called me a week ago. He has been looking for a job. family man, everything. And I was asking him, what do you want to get paid? And he was like, just give me 150,000 naira. That's it. You know, and I'm sitting down here, 150,000 naira. The same week, somebody came, we were looking for a house help, and she wanted to go to school, and this is smart, brilliant, able-bodied girl. What was she looking for? 25,000 naira a month. I say that to say that, you know, the reality of Nigeria, it's tough, right? You know, it's easy to be, you know, like the question that was asked, you know, should I go to a foreign university or a Nigerian university? It's easy to feel guilty to say, don't go to a Nigerian university. But if you come to me, foreign university, right? If you can, you go to a foreign university. But the reality is that not everybody is going to be able to go to a foreign university. How do you deal with that reality, right? How do you find hope in that reality? And like she said, you know, you just keep applying for, you know, as many jobs and positions. Even though you go to a Nigerian university, doesn't mean all hope is lost. You know, but just the reality is that I don't know. What do you want me to tell them, that there is hope? I don't know. You know, in terms of the best example I can give is technology, and I give what Andela has been able to do. When I went to the university, my first year I was being taught C++, 2000. I went to university in 2000. I went to Yaba Tech just to talk to the students, to educate students and help the students out, and they were teaching them C++. What I was taught 20 years ago, right? So what do you do? How do you give hope to that situation? What we found is that most people that we hire at my company, they learned from this for themselves. They were able to go on the internet and teach themselves these things. For tech, it works. Architecture, medicine, some other, you can't go on the internet and get your medical degree. Nobody's going to give you a job. You can't go on the internet and get an engineering degree. Nobody's going to give you a job, but tech, you can do it. So there's hope for those type of degrees that you don't need like heavy certification. And that's what Andela has been able to tap into. So I would say, can you find those type of jobs that are not tied to your degree, and you know that somebody has tried to change Yaba Tech's mentality and say, no, don't teach them C++, but for whatever reason, that makes no sense to me, it's being blocked, so that's it.
So Chosie's gonna add.
So I have to add to this because I empathize with sort of maybe where you are in terms of your mindset, like you said, and the frustrations, and I think I've heard you repeat that it's very hard, and I definitely understand that. But here's where I think our opinions differ, is that I am someone who truly, honestly, entirely, 150% believes in being self-motivated, self-driven, right? So if you have a dream for yourself, and I'm talking to all the young people in this room, you have to have a dream bigger than your circumstances. Do you hear what I'm saying? It has to be bigger than your circumstances, because if I allow you to think that your circumstances, the school that you go to, means that your future is predetermined, I am doing you a disservice. I have seen it. I have hired young girls from Covenant University in droves, and those girls are coming out sharp. There was one that I met at a company that I used to work for. She now works at GE, General Electric. So she will now tell me that, oh, because I didn't go to school abroad, that means that I have no hope. But she didn't study tech, she studied accounting. I have them on my team now, all locally trained people. But you know the difference between them and others? They're self-motivated. I've seen women that have said, I want to go into tech and my school is doing C++. So I started researching other types of programs. I applied for scholarship.